Recording studio, and when there was a new computer, a new operating system, he always wanted to use the 2-year-older one because it was more stable with the software.
Exactly. And you know, I've had nothing but problems for the last few weeks with this Apple computer, and that's where all the problems are coming from the computer. Like the board works fine. Wait.
Are we
assuming you press the record button, then it works fine.
Then it works fine. Are we videotaping this?
Yeah, maybe not the whole thing.
With a film camera?
Because I have to use this then.
We should use a film camera.
Oh.
Like a reel.
Yeah.
Reel to reel.
You got to give me a little advance notice so I can work that up. Because I got to mess with the lighting, and it's a thing.
Well, now that I'm a lizard daddy, I'm like...
Is that what the girls call you?
I'm a lizard. I mean, before, when I was down here in Castle Grayskull Studios, I had no interest whatsoever in these terrariums. But now that I am a lizard daddy, I'm very interested, and I'm just kind of trying to look at your lizards and compare. I'm getting lizard envy. And you have a beautiful lizard. What is he?
He's a leopard gecko. We have 2 of them, and they each have a 40-gallon tank to themselves.
And the other one, I have to admit, I've never seen. And I sort of get. Did you ever go to the zoo or one of these reptilianariums or whatever? And there's always a giant terrarium, and there's nothing in it, but there is, and you can never. So that's what that one is for me.
That one's hiding under a rock.
It just looks like a terrarium.
If you thought you had food, he'd come out. Or she. They're both females, apparently.
Right. And the food, last thing I'll say about this before everybody just turns the dial, is there's giant worms that I never noticed before. Just sort of.
Yes, those are super worms, they call those.
They are disgusting. They kind of look like centipedes, flipping around.
Well, and then when you feed them to the lizard, they come out and they grab it and they swallow it in one gulp, and you really feel the essence of biology and evolution and animals eating one another. It's amazing. But speaking of food, what do you call a cheese festival in France?
What?
A fromage hommage.
That's pretty bad.
That's courtesy of Kyle.
Yes.
In the Discord.
Thank you, Kyle.
It's super high-powered dad joke. What are you doing?
I'm just getting my timer. So,
why do you need to know what time it is?
I don't know. I'm just trying to.
All right,
keep it
to keep the show moving along.
Yes,
as we do.
I am the producer at large.
You're not very large.
No, it's small. And we're back. Welcome to Recovery in the Middle Ages, the podcast about 2 middle-aged suburban dads in their pursuit of life, love, and recovery. I'm not X.
And I'm Mike. I don't get a last initial.
Well, Mike R.
Okay, thank you.
You should be Mike X.
I don't want to be Mike X.
And boy, do we have a show for
Mike
you.
X is a porn star.
Today on RMA, it's the Cinco de Mayo RMA Spectacular. It's spring in New York and...
Yes, it's Cinco de Mayo.
Cinco!
Wait.
It's spring in New York.
Go ahead. Keep going.
It's spring in New York, and the dopamine is pumping as the Wonder Twins of middle-aged recovery assemble once again in the deep, dark, and cavernous depths of Castle Grayskull Studios. Today, we tackle the age-old recovery saying, "Your best thinking got you here," and discuss why so many people living in weed-legal states are still dying from alcohol-related causes. All this and more today on a very special Cinco de Mayo edition of RMA.
Hey, of course, you realize when people listen to this, it's going to be
6-0 de Mayo.
6-0 or 7-0 de Mayo.
Right.
But anyway, happy Cinco de Mayo. Cinco de Mayo, a holiday created by American beer companies.
I just got my tequila here. Hold on.
Contrary to popular belief, Cinco de Mayo does not mark Mexican independence.
No?
Rather, that's in September 16th, if I remember correctly. It actually commemorates the Battle of Puebla. which is a minor battle fought between the Mexican and the French armies in 1862. I wonder who surrendered first. The widespread commercialization of Cinco de Mayo occurred during the 1980s and 90s. Beer companies in particular targeted Mexican Americans, exhorting them to celebrate their heritage with Coronas, Bud Lights, and Dos Equis. And apparently not only do Mexicans in America celebrate it, but it's mostly celebrated by drunk college students.
Yes, that's right. And just for the record, explanation point, Dos Equis means 2 X's.
Yeah, it says it right on the bottle.
That's
Dos Equis.
making sure everyone 2 X's.
You know, it was funny because somebody posted, I belong to this Facebook travel group, Tri-State Travel, for travel tips and tricks. There's also a sober travel Facebook group. Have you? I joined that one because I was like, somebody said go to sober travel thing, so I joined it. And I'm the only guy in there. It's all like
nice.
It's all middle-aged women.
Oh, middle-aged. Yeah.
Well, what's wrong with middle-aged?
No,
women?
they're great. I love them.
I too am a middle-aged woman.
I am also a middle-aged woman.
That's a hollow back to an old episode.
Yes.
Anyway, so this woman posted like, I'm going to Cancun. I'm going to Cozumel. Can anyone tell me where I can go to help celebrate Cinco de Mayo in Mexico? And everyone just piled on her with like, nobody celebrates Cinco de Mayo in Mexico. And like, do you need a reason to drink in Cozumel? It seems like there's no shortage.
That's sort of like in Ireland, they don't really celebrate. According to my Irish neighbor, he says St. Paddy's Day. Because I said to him, "Oh, you must really love St. Paddy's Day because you're Irish." And he's like, "No, that's an American holiday." And I said, "Oh,
really?
Yeah, nobody celebrates it.
That surprises
me. We get drunk every day," he said.
Well, right. I guess that's true.
Yeah.
Anyway, this episode is brought to you by the Recovery in the Middle Ages Patreon. And I would like to thank our Patreon members, few in number as they are.
They were waning.
For supporting the podcast. We are a listener-supported recovery podcast, and everything that we do here is based off of the support that we get from you guys. You are our mirror. We stare deep into your soul and reflect it back into these microphones every week.
That's right.
And a little bit of a donation or a little bit of scratch from you guys helps us keep the lights on and helps us keep producing the great content that you come here for.
Yeah, it makes
these
me feel
jokes
good.
are not cheap.
No,
we have to spend lots of money on them. So what is Patreon? It's a members-only subscription service. And the best part about the subscription service is once you sign up, Nat will send you the secret codes for the Discord service, which is a private message chat and video meeting platform.
Yeah, and it's very active on there. There's a lot of good support, and you could talk to me and Mike. You give us a hard time about the show. It's a good time.
Yeah. Or we actually take jokes from our Patreon members, like that one I just ripped off from Kyle, but I gave him credit for it. So
contribute to the show. We get so much. I was talking to somebody on the Patreon about they were saying something. They were like surprised or that they heard something they wrote, in the group, and they said, "Listen, we could not do this without you guys.
That's right.
You're half the show, if not more."
Right. Especially lately.
Yeah.
So go to patreon.com/recovery in the Middle Ages to learn more and to sign up.
I just wanted to say one thing.
What's that?
Welcome to all the Monksters listening stateside, around the world, down the street, across the table, and right next door. Welcome all. Settle in, buckle up, and get ready for excitement, comedy, tragedy, intrigue, mystery, and so much more. Where can they find us, Mike?
They can find us at middleagesrecovery.com, our occasionally updated website. You can also locate the podcast on Podbean, Apple Podcast, YouTube, Spotify, any place that you get your typical weekly selection of podcasts. We're there. Come hang out with us. Come get show updates, meet other Monksters, look at our funny memes, the latest news and views on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Hit us up on your socials. Smash that like button.
Getting this from your kids' YouTube peoples.
Yes. We have weekly RMA meetings chaired by Grant and Aaron alternatively, and David actually did one, didn't he? A couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I think that was so
awesome.
Great. I love to see that new Monksters are getting involved, and it's really cool.
And Grant posts a link to the meeting every week on the Facebook page, but if you can't find it, it's often hard to find. That's Facebook, not Grant's issue. Just drop me an email. Send me your digits, man. Mike R at middleagesrecovery.com for details.
Yeah, speaking of Grant, I just wanted to recap our last show a little bit. I just wanted to, say, wow, it was a lot of fun. That was all I wanted to say.
Well,
I wasn't supposed to say that.
I'm trying to remember what our last show was.
Take 3 with
Grant was awesome. Having him live,
but it was great.
Having him live in the studio is much better. I mean, I like the segment, but I like the interaction that we have better.
Yeah, it was something that we were thinking about, and I'm just glad that he finally came out and said, you know what, guys, can I just please come on? We could talk about it, and it'll be a lot more fun. And it was, so that was really cool. We had a great time. So if you haven't heard that show, go back and listen. Thank you, Grant.
So people occasionally leave us reviews, very occasionally lately, on the Apple Podcast app.
Yes.
But they also send us emails, and I believe that we got an email recently. Did we not?
We did, and I've talked about some of my issues with our website redesign where I'm having trouble finding where the form submits. So I was digging around on our admin area. It's WordPress.
That sounds so tech wonky.
I'm sorry. And I found this one, but I'm not sure if this was submitted on like the contact form or it's such a mess. So in any case, this is one that I found. It's from Kelly, and the message is, first of all, I'm still your biggest fan.
Hey.
Yay. You read my review on your podcast many months ago. Funny story about that I'll reveal later. I just listened to your 3/11/22 podcast. 2 things stood out to me. First, Nat has PTSD while driving. Second, Mike does not get lots of emails.
That's true, too.
Since you are not getting lots of emails, I don't feel the least bit guilty for the length of this email.
Kelly, thank you for taking up time
we appreciate
in the show. We need all the content we can get.
We need it.
I'm just going to settle in and listen to you read it.
Buckle up.
Go ahead.
Or saddle up. She says,
saddle up.
Nat, I too had challenging PTSD from car accidents. Prior to age 16, I was the passenger in several very serious car accidents.
Oof.
This led to significant anxiety if I wasn't the person driving.
Oh, yeah.
If someone else is driving, I was constantly on high alert with a significant fight or flight response. Me too. This was a major issue in my marriage and led to numerous arguments. 3 years ago, I participated in EMDR.
What does that stand for?
Elliptical manufacturing driving response.
Oh, right. Okay.
No, I just made that up. Yeah. I have no idea. She probably says it somewhere. EMDR was a kind of treatment with like light and
right. I remember hearing about this.
Electricity, I think.
Yeah. We're talking about it on another show.
Use the Google machine. And it significantly reduced, almost eliminated the PTSD symptoms. That's interesting. As your biggest fan, I implore you to research to find a seasoned therapist with experience providing EMDR as a PTSD treatment.
Eye movement desensitization and reprocessing theory.
I was close.
This is something that we looked at when Dimitri was having some issues a couple of years ago, and we weren't quite sure if there was some heretofore revealed trauma that he was dealing with. And I found it very interesting to sort of that like this whole thing with light therapy could really sort of reorder the way you respond to stimuli. But I guess it makes sense. Anyway, continue.
She continues, this could be life-changing, and at the very least, it may provide lots of content for the podcast and Patreon members. All right. I like the way she thinks. So back to the funny story regarding my review. I've never left a review for any podcast, but felt that leaving a review was the least I could do to compensate you for the quality content you were providing.
Thank you.
God,
if all of you would do that,
please,
we would be on the front page of fucking Apple podcasts, and then what? It would be amazing.
We would be on Oprah, and it would be exciting.
We'd be the new Gabor Mates.
We could be at the Academy Awards, and then I could go up and slap somebody.
You could. Or we could go to the Met Gala and wear suits with shit written on them.
Yeah, or just like raw meat into a suit.
That's been done.
Right after I sent the review, I realized I had no idea if my actual name or email would be attached to the review. That kind of stressed me out, but of course, life goes on, and I forgot about it. That next Friday, I had a very stressful day at work. Before I left work, I thought to myself, I'd really enjoy a glass of red wine. At this point, I had over 180 days alcohol-free. I was in a true internal tug of war. Finally, I said to myself, if Nat or Mike read my review on the podcast, that will be a sign from the universe not to drink tonight.
No shit.
Wow. So, as I'm driving home listening to your podcast, I hear Mike begin to read my review. I literally said out loud, motherfucker! So, being true to my word, I did not drink that night. Thank you. YBF, your biggest fan. By the way, Mike, thank you for the recommendation to listen to Pamplemousse.
Yes.
I love their music, but most of all, I love watching them on YouTube.
Yes.
When I
great.
watch them perform, I can feel their energy and that they truly love how everything comes together. I don't think anyone could watch them perform and not smile, giggle, or start dancing. Kelly, wow, that is so cool. Thank you so much for telling us that. Sometimes we wonder, does anybody listen to this?
Does anybody care?
Yeah, does anyone care? Is it making a difference? And reading things like this lets me know that we are helping somewhere.
The Pamplemousse is great, but the best part is like the guy who's like the head of Patreon, who created Patreon, started this band, Pamplemousse, right? And it's like him and his wife and a bunch of like session musicians, and they get together and they do covers of all these crazy songs. But this guy, to watch him, is hysterical because he's a skinny guy, he's got a beard, and he's like, when he plays, he bobs up and down like he's a marionette on strings. It's really great. And it's great because you look at this guy and you're like, he's worth like $1 billion and he doesn't give a shit about anything.
You think he made $1 billion on Patreon?
I mean, hundreds of millions of dollars off Patreon.
No wonder.
I think he probably sold it by now, but I don't really know.
Yeah. Probably.
Anyway, a shout out to Pamplemousse and maybe the Patreon.
I'm just repositioning.
You're always in motion.
I know.
It makes me very anxious. I need some EMDR to deal with your fucking movements.
I know. And anyone who's seen our video episodes knows that.
No. It's actually not that bad. I'm not trying to give you a complex about it. I really am not.
I already have a complex.
Well, in that case, let's mine it for content.
And now it's time for Monkster Speak.
What did they been up to? Let's take a peek. The segment we call Monkster Speak. Speak.
Yes. So they speaketh now.
They speak, but I just read a lot of stuff. So you want to read something?
Sure. Monkster Speak. Okay, so the overarching theme of this week's show is the statement, your best thinking got you here.
Your best thinking got you here, idiot.
That is a great impression of a Long Island AA.
Yeah, this is what you hear.
So it's something that I guess you used to hear a lot in the rooms, usually meaning that the thinking is bad, and since the thinking got you into the situation you were in, you should stop thinking entirely for yourself and let other people think for you. Specifically, the group of people in the church basement, Bill W., Lois, perhaps Dr. Bob, and that guy who you just read in his voice.
Take the cotton out of your ears and stick it in your mouth.
Right. So you put out the question to the gang, what do you guys think about that sentiment? And I have to say, we got some very interesting responses. Mm-hmm. Very interesting. And they were kind of all over the place. Mm-hmm. But what I like about our audience specifically that I don't like about other audiences, our audience is very good at thinking for themselves, and they're very opinionated, and they are very good at communicating.
Yeah, they can write. Sometimes we read these, and I'm like, yes.
And what I love, I'm going to read Amy's because I love Amy. Amy was the one that reached out to me to get me to do that thing for the lawyer health seminar, right?
Oh, cool.
So, and she's joined our little group. She's in our Patreon and everything, and
nice.
It's awesome. But anyway, what I love is Amy's first sentence. I'm not familiar with how it's used in AA, so I can't speak to the brainwashing. I love that. Somebody with sobriety, without AA, and AA never even enters the picture, right? But I do like the overall message that we should not necessarily trust our thoughts. Just because we think something does not make it true. I'm 50 years old, and I didn't come to that realization until I was in my mid-40s. I still have to remind myself often that thoughts are just thoughts, and we don't really have much control over what pops into our head. That's also an extremely Buddhist way of thinking. They say that, you know how your pancreas secretes insulin? Yeah. And it's an organ, and that's what it does. The thinking is that the brain is an organ, and its job is to secrete thoughts. And so you don't need to become attached to those thoughts. You can just sort of let them flow through your hands and observe them, which will probably be more something that we discuss as we get deeper into the topic. But I agree with that.
Yes.
You have to watch your thinking, but that doesn't mean to suspend your thinking.
Yeah.
Do you want to read Don's?
Don A. says, this statement also reminds me that I can't do recovery by myself. We are sometimes blind to aspects of our thinking and behavior that compassionate others can help us see. Recovery communities can help us grow, whether it is 12-step or something else.
That is true.
Yeah. It's like a Rorschach test.
What is?
Like some of these sayings. Like,
yes.
Put the saying out there.
Right.
Like feelings aren't facts or something like that. And depending on the person, hearing it, they kind of make it mean what they need it to mean, or what it's kind of like that sometimes, I think.
Yes. A couple things I like in there. I can't do recovery by myself. You probably can, but it's probably not optimal.
No. Support
because
is best.
If you agree that you can't, then that statement is something you identify with,
is that
right?
a self-fulfilling prophecy, as they say?
And why did this just? Sorry.
Yeah. It'll come true if you say can't right out of the gate.
Right.
Maybe you won't.
So anyway, Allie says, I've never been to AA. There's another one. I don't like the idea I'm powerless, or that without working the steps I'll fail. I would probably disagree with this statement in its proper context. However, I believe we all have blind spots. The conversations I've had with others in recovery helps me to identify my blind spots. Connection is the key. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm withholding my comments on this because I have a devil's advocate view on this
On what?
Just let's continue reading. I'm waiting to pounce on this.
Okay. Oh,
yeah.
Your turn.
Right. The RMA wizard, the wizened one. And I wanted to just say that now I've heard, since we got into a little debate about how to pronounce wizened, I've heard it wizened several times now.
Yeah, it's the wizened one.
Or, here's my thought on this. I bet you it's wizened in like England, and I heard it somewhere on a British podcast, and that's why I like it.
Like instead of whining, you whinge?
Yeah, something like that. I think so somebody clear that up for me. Is it wizened or wizened, or is it a regional thing?
And what do you guys from Australia call it? Just to sort of throw a curve in there. Anyway.
So in any case, the wizened one, Alan B., says, it was my worst thinking or best thinking I was capable of at the time. If I'm not better 40 years later, or 4, I have something else going on. I like that. This is one of those things that gets parroted in AA by people who've stopped thinking. Brilliant. I love being a heretic. Yes, thank you, Alan. And once again, you've said it all.
Yeah, you shouldn't outsource your thinking to somebody else.
No, but...
we're going to have fun in a minute.
Yeah.
I can tell. Yeah. Chase says, I disagree with the statement. I knew what I was doing was wrong, but the addiction swayed me to do it anyway. It was not my best thinking. Yeah. It's not your best thinking that gets you there.
Right.
It's your shitty, crappy thinking.
Right.
My best thinking is what's keeping me sober, helping to improve myself, making me a better husband and father. That's my best thinking. I knew the difference between right and wrong at 4 years old.
Oh, really?
But my illness swayed me to do wrong in order to feel right. That's another sort of Buddhist thing, is that the conceptualization is right from wrong. It's like innate inside of you. You know what the right thing to do is, what the next right thing is. But your lens is cloudy and scratched. You need to clear the lens so you can clearly see what's right and what's not right.
Yeah, I don't believe that human beings are intrinsically evil and,
No, original sin?
No.
Craziness.
I don't buy it.
You're going to make me read this one, right, from Elizabeth?
Why would you say that?
Because it starts off with, I agree with Nat.
Yeah, why? Because I emboldened and underlined it?
That I could never... Oh, I just read the other one. Why don't you read this one?
Elizabeth says...
Say it again.
I agree with Nat that I could never stop thinking for myself, especially when the alternative was a higher power or anything with religious overtones. But it seems like AA was the only option for so many years. Even when I first got sober in 2021, I thought AA was the only thing available for people like me, and I didn't want it. It was only when I discovered all the alternatives that seemed to pop up a few years ago that I could get motivated. I do agree that some of my best thinking I could moderate. I could alternate water with wine only on weekends, special occasions, beer and wine only, etc., got me where I was. That last sentence again without the parentheses was, I do agree that some of my best thinking got me where I was. Yeah, thank you so much. I agree with you that you agree with me.
Right. So Maggie says, I think it's a little degrading and oversimplified, the statement.
Possibly.
Yes, I agree with Maggie. I think individuals' thoughts are a lot more complex than that. Getting sober has been a process of listening to myself instead of stuffing down my feelings or second-guessing them. Yeah. I'm afraid this message would further confuse people about whether or not their thoughts and feelings are valid. Yeah. Trust yourself. See, I would say the exact opposite. I would say that you know how to heal yourself. And you can avail yourself of connections with other people, but ultimately, because what's this whole thing we've been saying about how you are other people, right? There's no practical difference between you and other people. Mm-hmm. So then what's the difference between you healing yourself or other people helping to heal you?
Good point.
Is it? I don't know. I just pulled that out of my ass.
I like it.
Anyway, you're up.
Maya A. To me, this means that our thinking allowed us to talk ourselves into to rationalizing the bad decisions. As our thinkers become clearer from not using, we often need to reframe certain thoughts or learn new coping mechanisms.
Yes, absolutely. Is our thinker our brain?
Yeah.
I think that's what that means.
To me, this means that our thinking allowed us to talk ourselves. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Brad says, I have mixed feelings on this. On the one end, I don't love prescribing to the notion that my best thinking takes me to bad places, that using my own mental faculties got me nowhere positive. What?
I think it's subscribing to the notion, even though it says prescribing.
Subscribing, sorry.
He's thinking about, it says prescribing, but I think he meant to say, I don't love subscribing to the notion.
I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth.
Okay, go on.
I'm 9 months sober as of yesterday. And I'd like to think my actual best thinking and action helped me get here with love and support from those I trust and care about to start and help with the journey. I don't take sole credit, but I don't sell myself short, because if I did, I'd have no faith in myself to continue to build towards a better future. What kind of vote of confidence in myself is that? What I take from this is that in active addiction, my thinking is completely shot. I have a dog who's incredibly sweet and generally well behaved. Lucky you. However, when she catches the scent of certain food, she hears nothing else, responds to nothing. All conventional training is gone. When I'm in the thick of, or on the cusp of using and drinking, my judgment and thinking are similar. Gone. Out the window. It's almost like I am driving in the middle of a thick fog, deciding where to turn without realizing I can't see 2 feet in front of me. Using this metaphor, my thinking gets me to make wrong turns or crash. I should rely on others with a bird's eye view to guide me until I'm out of the fog and can see clearly, at which point I can steer again.
Ding, ding.
Okay. Also, acknowledging that the fog may come back, and my actual best thinking when it does is to recognize the fog is coming in, and then I'll need to rely on others again rather than what used to be my typical thought process. I can see fine. We're good. I got this.
Yes. Okay, this is precisely why I didn't say anything, because I was waiting for someone else to say it.
Okay.
I think that's exactly kind of the point I was going to make, but let's read this last one before, go on.
Go on.
Chris M. says, I don't have much to add. Oh, okay. Never mind.
Anyway, moving on. No.
As I agree with much of what has been said here, I do see both sides of the sentiment as it relates to this topic. It makes me reflect on something I have heard you mention before on the pod more than a few times. An underlying foundation of lasting sobriety is simply knowing the damage that alcohol does, how it works in our systems, and how to interrupt that cycle. My best thinking didn't really include that at one point, and now it does. Once you know, you can't go back. Yeah, so today on the show, on the main section of the show, we are going to dive into this, your best thinking thing. So I will withhold most of my comments for that, but I just wanted to say that mostly, everybody here makes great points, and they're very easy to agree with. And it's so easy from where I'm sitting now to say, my best thinking got me right here where I am. Look at me, thinking up a storm, doing the right stuff with my thinker, and I'm so smart. Truth is, when I really go back to the time when I started to first hear people tell me that, your best thinking got you here. When I first started hearing that, it was what I think it was what I needed to hear at that moment. When I was in that acute stage of, just like, I think it was Brad that said, you're in this fog. When I finally, stumbled into that first AA meeting, my brain had been hijacked by what my addiction, my cravings. So I was not myself. And so it wasn't my best thinking. And that's the point. It really isn't your best thinking that gets you into these rooms and into recovery most times when you're like that. It's sort of, I stumbled into it. I had no other place to go. Pretty much all the decisions I had made for the previous 5 years up to that point had been awful, and so that's kind of the message, because when you get somebody in the rooms at that point and you're trying to convince them to, not seek drugs and to convince them to do the program, whatever program it is, they're going to argue with you. I'm dealing with this with a friend of mine's fiance is right now arguing. He's slightly sober-ish, like he's in a better place than he was 2 months ago, but he's still kind of battling it. He's finally in a program of a kind, in an outpatient program. And instead of just going with it and listening to them and following doctor's orders and listening to the therapist, he's doing his thinking. He's like, well, I don't know if I like the sound of that. And, like the way that person talked to me. And maybe that philosophy on recovery is, but really what he's doing is he's trying to get himself out of being in that outpatient.
Well,
he's fucking around. And if he just sat there and did what they said for 3 weeks instead of 2, maybe he would start to get a clearer head, at which point he could then say, with an actual best thinking, maybe this isn't for me. Maybe, what the therapist is saying doesn't really work for me. But when you're in that place, I feel like the best thing for him or for me at the time was to just go with what your doctors and therapists are telling you, even though your addict brain can come up with all of these reasons why what they're saying is wrong. And the feeling I got in that group didn't make me feel good, so I'm not going back. A lot of that is addict thinking, trying to do its best thinking to get you out of there so you can use again. So it's a little more complicated than I think it's laid out.
Well, you can make a series of bad decisions, and you can see things in a non-clear way. But the solution to that is not necessarily to just shut up and listen to what people are telling you. You can take advice from all different sources. And I think going to a therapist and ignoring what a therapist is telling you is a very different situation than going into an AA meeting and having somebody tell you to shut the fuck up and just listen to what the program's saying. Because there are some people whose personalities are not going to be able to accept someone telling them to shut the fuck up and just listen to what they're being told.
Right.
But you can get to the bottom of that with a therapist, with maybe some EMDR or whatever other kind of therapy to deal with the underlying trauma. But, or you can get your medication prescribed, your Suboxone or whatever it is. But, this whole idea of tough love and of people basically trying to completely disassemble your self-esteem even further by telling you that you don't know what the fuck you're talking about and you're such a fucking mess that you better listen to us or you're going to end up dead or on the street. I don't know. I don't think you need that to recover. I think there's plenty of different ways to skin that cat.
It sounds really good to say that now, but when I look back at the way I was and the other addicts, man.
So then you're sort of advocating for tough love.
A little bit in certain circumstances. I'm trying to remember where I was at mentally and the struggles I was having with trying to do, I'm not going to listen to them and arguing with the little. It didn't serve me.
Just because you're addicted to something, it doesn't mean that you lose the right to contest what people are telling you should be your treatment. If they're telling you have to believe in fucking God and all this other shit that you don't believe in.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like
you don't lose your rights because,
It's very idealistic to think that way, but the reality of an acute substance use disorder, you really, it's from where we're sitting right now and we're thinking and discussing, it's very much like, yeah, I have rights. I'm smart. I can, but man, when you are where some of us were, I don't know. I think
but
you
interventions
need to shut up and listen.
Don't work, right?
No.
And so neither does somebody sitting there and telling you that you have to do this, that, and the other thing, and you shouldn't think about what you're doing. People only come to get better when they want to. And that's their best thinking, that they want to go get better.
I don't know. I don't think people. I don't think. I'll just speak for myself. I don't know if I had been given all the leeway that I wanted intellectually, I would have just taken it and kept using. I would have taken it, and that's what I did. Every inch I could get from whomever, any bit of benefit of the doubt, any like, hey, you make this decision. Why don't you do the right thing? I never did the right thing. That's me. And I think a lot of people were like that, and I don't know. I think it's giving people in that situation a little too much.
I don't know. I wish we had Evan Haynes back here because I know that that's not their approach, and they're very successful with this idea of giving people like plenty of support, encouragement, listening to what they have to say, letting them,
All I'm saying is I get what the reason they do it is. Whether or not it's the best thing, I don't know. I just can only speak for myself. But we are moving on.
Your success rate would argue against that being the right way to do it.
Well, look.
By the power of recovery,
go on.
I call on you, Monksters, speak!
And that was Monksters Speak.
It was.
And moving on to the life update.
Oh, wow. We're just to the life update. Holy shit.
Yeah, I told you it was going to be a 3-hour show tonight. One of the reasons I was on my way here, and I had just done the life update on the on my outline, and I completely forgot a major thing that happened, and I did not remember it till I got into your dining room, and your wife asked me. She goes, "Oh," and then Noah broke his hand, I said,
"No, I yelled that out from the bathroom."
Oh, that was you,
because I didn't tell her, and I thought she was going to be mad at me for not telling her.
I completely forgot. Big news. Noah broke his, he fractured his hand. It was like a major annoying thing. And, I mean, it's
more for him probably.
Yeah. I think he's one of these kids where he's like, he feels validated.
Well, yeah, maybe more for you actually.
He feels validated that his hand was broken because on Sunday is when he broke it, and he didn't do it doing anything interesting. He had finished biking. He was coming into the house, and he tripped and fell, I guess, and stopped himself with his hands on the patio.
Classic.
And it's just at the top of the palm under the forefinger, a fracture. Now,
what bone did he fracture?
It's like, that's where they showed me. It's here. So what happened though was when he heard it, he of course came in, he was in pain. Oh, I'm in pain. And I said,
suck it up, buttercup.
Pretty much. That's tough love, right? And I said, well, because
and how do you feel about that?
Well, now I feel like an asshole, but at the time I was like, you think if it was broken, he would be screaming and crying, and he was just kind of like uncomfortable. So we moved on and woke up the next day, and he was complaining a little bit. Oh, I don't know if I can write. I'm like, oh, of course you can write. You just sprained your wrist. It's fine. Go to school. Goes to school Monday. Tuesday morning, now he's like so beside himself with pain and anguish.
Oh, poor kid.
And what did I do? Suck it up. Go to school. I have to get to work. Are you kidding me? You've got to go to school. You're not getting out of school because you hurt your wrist. I went to school with 2 broken hands. I did the whole thing.
Right.
So, and then finally he was so upset that I said, listen, get to school. And if it's that bad, you go straight to the nurse, have her call me. I'll come pick you up. So I wanted to see if I could get him over that. Like, once you're at school, you want to say, I get a call 20 minutes later from the nurse. Your son is here. I said, I know. I think you have to get this hand checked out. Do you want to bring Tylenol? And I'm like, no, I don't want to bring Tylenol. I'm going to make a doctor's appointment.
Right.
We're going to call his bluff. This is the way I said. I'm like, I'm going to call his bluff. I went in, grabbed him, took him to the doctor. Dr. Greg's feeling. He goes, said, this has, I think we need to get this x-rayed. And I said, no, come on. You're being ridiculous. There's no way. So we get an x-ray, and at this point, I go to work, leave him at home for my wife came home to take him. Long, short story, longer. It's fractured. So he's got a fractured hand, and he's got a brace, and the whole schmear, and I'm a schmuck.
No, listen, the kids will try and get over on you.
All the time.
I made Ben run a 5K with pneumonia once.
Yeah, and
I just didn't know,
Yeah, Noah said that. He's like, I just realized I went biking with a broken hand. How cool is that? I'm like, that's not really cool. So that was a major thing in my life. Is Noah's with a broken hand.
I wouldn't feel too bad about it. I mean, they try everything to get out of school. I mean, Ben had mysterious stomach aches. There were times, and he sometimes has had problems like going to the bathroom, right? So he gets backed up for like a week.
Right.
He'd be so pissed if he knew I was saying. But so whenever he's like, I got a stomach ache, I can't go to school. I'm like, just go take a shit, you'll be fine. And then it turns out he's got like norovirus or something. But, you just don't know.
What am I supposed to do?
And if that's why I explain to them all the time, the crying wolf, it results in you having to go to school when you're really sick.
Yeah,
So.
and that's Noah. My other son. He's like always doing the right thing. He's amazing, Max. Yeah. So if he's
told me, young enough, he doesn't know better yet. He doesn't know how to get over on you yet.
I mean, Noah kind of always had that, but so I felt awful about that. But besides that, we went to this the Cub Scouts. I did a Cub Scout thing.
Hey,
I know we don't have Cub Scouts the same age.
We don't
anymore.
have Cub Scouts in common.
No, but my Cub Scout Max, they had this praying mantis. Learning extravaganza display thing, but it took place at like Pine Lawn Cemetery, which was really interesting. And, it was really, really weird. Like I got the directions on the GPS. It says, so praying mantis, like a learning thing. They show you praying mantises
at the cemetery.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's a huge sprawling.
Yeah, I think my parents are buried there.
It looks like everybody's. I mean, it's huge.
It's military.
There is a military section of it, but it's this huge sprawling, cemetery, and it's so big, kind of like Jones Beach. There's like a west exit,
west field,
west entrance 1 through 3, right, east entrances.
Right. People are dying to get in there.
They are dying. and
it's a grave undertaking.
Yes, and it's a grave undertaking. Oh God! And wow, it's really,
fuck.
There you go.
I fucking hate
slow
myself.
in the uptake.
Right.
So, in any case, I'm driving Max there, and I go into the wrong, entrance because I'm not reading the directions properly. Finally, I get there. It's really a lot of fun, though. They show you the praying mantis.
Wait, hold on.
Yeah.
You go to the cemetery.
Yeah, I go.
What do you do? You check in at the where they bringing people's coffins by, and they have a praying mantis show for the kids.
Well, kind of.
What the fuck is that?
I was kind of amazed by the whole thing because it is this beautiful grounds, and it's also an arboretum.
But for the dead people, it would be pretty cool.
Well, yeah. So there is kind of a morbid, overhang. You're sort of like, this is great, but I'm, in a cemetery. And they sort of announced, or I was reading some of the the papers that they handed out, kind of saying, this is Pine Lawn Cemeteries, it's something we're doing for the community to help bring awareness about, life and, but what I gathered from the little pamphlet, which I thought was interesting, is it's sort of like it must be a marketing department or something at Pine Lawn Cemetery. And what they're really trying to do is they're trying to do these things for kids on the cemetery grounds to somehow make you have positive associations with like cemeteries. And
so when you leave, you're like, kids, this place is great.
Yeah.
If I drop dead in the next couple of weeks, bring me back here.
I think that's what it is.
That's some crazy fucking crafty.
And the other angle was
deep state marketing.
Yeah. The other angle that I gathered from it was that the people who have a loved one buried there, they will do things like this praying mantis event for kids. And then, so you can go there and you can experience the arboretum and also visit your loved ones.
I didn't even know there was an arboretum.
Yeah. It's a major.
So that's a section without the bodies.
The bodies seem to be everywhere.
Okay.
I don't think you can avoid the bodies. Like even where we were, you could see where
it's
they
fucking crowded everywhere on Long Island. They're dead or alive. You're waiting on some kind of line.
So it was cool. The kids had a blast at the cemetery, and
that is the weirdest fucking thing, man.
I'm sorry. Any case, we ended up, and this is very dopey. The praying mantis thing. I don't know if anyone listens to Dopey, but there's a whole praying mantis shtick. There's church with the praying mantis, and in any case, so it was very dopey. We got a praying mantis egg. At the end of it, each child got one to bring home.
Oh, wow.
And they hatch 200 or 300 of these mantis creatures.
And then they take over your home.
That's what it seems like. So, anyway, Max had a blast. It was great to visit the cemetery with my child. And,
wow.
Yeah, I recommend it.
That is wow. I don't know what's happened to leadership of that troop since we left. But
former Eagle Scout is our troop leader, by the way. Actually, you're always an Eagle Scout, aren't you? Joe.
Mama? Joe.
Big man.
What?
Big man.
I don't know who that is.
Anyway, he's the leader.
All right.
There it is.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
What about you? Did you go to any cemeteries and see anything?
No.
Oh.
No, I went up to Bear Mountain last weekend, though. You know where that is?
Yeah, vaguely.
Yeah.
I've been there.
It's like 30 miles away or 3.5 hours by car from Long Island. It was just traffic the whole way. So, and we got a late start. We didn't leave till like noon.
Wait, why were you at Bear Mountain?
We went because there's some great hiking trails there. You have beautiful views of the Hudson.
So you just took you took your kids?
I took Jack, and Ben,
right,
and Erin,
right,
and Rosie the dog, the one that barks a lot, the one that's very high strung and has a lot of energy.
Isn't that right?
Because you can bring dogs to the state park. Many state parks you cannot. This one you can.
Huh.
So
that's fun.
So after an excruciatingly long time sitting in traffic, we arrive. We get out. We start walking up the trail. The trail is it's very steep, but it's like stairs because so many thousands and tens of thousands of people have gone up the side of this mountain since it was turned into a state park over the years that they've basically hacked stairs into the side of it. So you can just walk up. 10 minutes up, we lose Ben and Erin because neither one of them was really prepared for that level of physical engagement. I mean, Erin's doesn't get a lot of.
Where did you tell him you were going? Pine Lawn Cemetery?
No. We do, but we got up to the first vista and it was very beautiful and very nice. But it only took like 15 minutes to get up there. And then Ben was like, who spent basically the last 2 years sitting on the couch, eating snacks and playing video games, like it had enough. Right. And Erin also, just kind of tapped out. And me and Jack are standing there looking at each other, and there was like a little waterfall up the way. So I said, let's go. We're going to go explore that waterfall. So we went up to the waterfall, and then, Jack is sort of cut from my cloth, and we're like, I wonder if we can get to the top of it and get around the back. And so we start bushwhacking off the trail through. Nice. Yeah, it was great. Except we went way the wrong direction. We got lost. We had to come back. It took like 45 minutes to get back, and we had left Erin and Ben sitting down there waiting, and they were not in the best of moods. And were
they both on their iPhones?
Burst out of the woods,
Angry Birds or something.
I don't know. I felt. But I mean, I didn't intend to get lost, but they say it's not your intention, it's the effect.
Right.
So,
that sounds like fun.
Yes. And then we went down and we walked around, and Ben got an ice cream because, he didn't have enough to eat that day. And, then we got back in the car and took 2.5 hours to get home. So,
well, I think it's the thought that counts.
We really did plan on having a nice day outside.
Yeah. Well, I wish I could get
the dog
my
had
family.
A good time.
Oh, the dog had a good time?
The dog had a good time.
I would like to organize family trips to hike somewhere, but
you know what? It's just luck. It's tough, man.
Yeah, everybody in my family wants to do something different. It's very hard for me to
here
organize.
too. I mean, but I mean, everybody wanted to go outside because it was like the first nice day.
Yeah. Oh, and the weather's been so great.
You realize we're getting a storm for the next 3 days. It's going to fucking sideways rain, 50 degrees. Fucking hate the Northeast.
Well,
anyway,
we had a nice time. I went for a walk too. I took, when we have these nice days, I come home and Max is my hiking buddy, but we don't really hike anywhere. We go for walks, and we play a game. I don't know if I talked about it. It's called Swords and Dragons, and where we pretend to.
You don't say.
Yeah. So we grab a stick, and he makes up a whole story behind.
Wow.
He's amazing. Cool. He's narrating it constantly. And I'll say something like, and I'm gonna, chop down this, red dragon, and I'm just trying to play along, but he'll correct me and be like, no, Daddy, that's not a red dragon. That's a silver dragon, and this one is our friend, so please don't kill him.
Sounds like you had a dungeon master there, like a budding dungeon master.
He is the dungeon master.
Yeah.
And so that was such a great time. But yeah, Max is hilarious. We have these we have these stray cats that we feed in our backyard. We've got 4 or 5 of them. Hocus Pocus, Midnight, and we have Twittens, Mittens, Vladimir,
Jesus,
and then a couple of raccoons. So
you just sort of slip that in there,
yeah,
like it's nothing.
There's like 3 raccoons. They come at night. Richard and Nixon. My kids named them Richard and Nixon. I don't know why.
That's good.
Not a big Nixon family, but and so my parents had come over to watch the kids for this. My wife and I went to see a stand-up comedian, and all of a sudden we see Midnight just like jump up, come down, and start batting something around. And then we ran out to see what it was. He ran away. It was a robin. He murdered a robin in my backyard. But
oh, dear.
Max being...
Take him to Pine Lawn?
Yeah, we should have. Almost. Max now has... he's such a compassionate soul. He wanted to give it a proper Christian burial.
Oh.
So we did. We had a service for it. And
did Noah play the trumpet?
Noah did not play the trumpet. He doesn't play along with this stuff as much as I'd like him to. He's a little sarcastic about it. But the point of this was we were going out. I went on a double date.
Wow.
With my wife and this other couple who's old friends of hers. And it was one of these things where we had tickets before the pandemic.
Right. Rescheduled a few times.
And it's we didn't even remember that we had it. We went to the Paramount in our favorite town to walk around in and buy CBD. And it was a lot of fun. And it was really cool to just be with another couple. But it was a big like drinking thing. But the great thing was first we went out to dinner at I think it was called Buenos Aires, maybe.
No,
Basito.
Basito is the greatest Mexican place.
Yes, and they make the guacamole in front of you. And it's really great. But the topic of drinking, not drinking came up. Interestingly, the husband, Brian, is he's in a wheel. He's a paraplegic, and partially because of this, he's become very healthy,
right?
For a number of reasons, and part of his health regimen means he doesn't drink. So he's very sober. And what's interesting is, I guess he knew I was sober anyway. And when they came to take the drink order, of course, he orders a non-alcoholic drink and our wives order the alcoholic drinks. And then we got to talking about it. And I've gotten myself to a point where I don't mince words at all. Yeah. And I don't know if this is a good or a bad thing, but I don't pretend anything. I just, I come right out with it. I said, I've been in recovery, for almost 5 years, and it doesn't do anything for me to drink anymore. And we just were talking openly. Yeah. And he was kind of like, I'm not in recovery, but, when I stopped drinking, is the best thing I ever did. And I don't know why anyone would drink. And it's like we're kind of having the same conversation coming from completely different places.
Yeah, but that's really cool.
It was cool.
And it's great to have a sober buddy at one of these things.
Totally. And it was just like, I don't know, it was the most open, honest conversation about my recovery and sobriety that I've had with someone I don't know that well, who's not also in recovery. Right. And it's sort of like I felt like I was bringing the conversation into like normal conversation. It's like we're taking it out of the rooms, out of the podcast, and just bringing it to the dinner table. Yeah. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. And Nate, the name of the guy that we went to see, who's super fun, it was Nate Bargatze. You may have seen a couple of his specials. He's 43 years old.
Is he funny?
He's a clean comedian, so it's not a bunch of like. Okay. He's very funny. You would like it because it's not slow, but it's like it's really
What's
good.
That mean?
Well, it's not.
I would like it because it's slow.
It's not like joke punchline. It's not like Jim Gaffigan's like joke punchline, which I like, but this is a little more. You have to like listen a little bit, and it's a little sarcastic. It's a little subtle. Very funny. It was a lot of fun, and just to contrast the pre-show dinner, we were meeting up with my wife's other friend and her husband in this the special bar club underneath. It's this fancy, right? I forget what it's called, but you have to be a member. They want like $10,000 to get in for the year.
It's like the Golden Circle or something.
Yeah. Exactly. And so the reason we got in was because my wife's friend is a wine dealer, or he's like the wine salesman who actually works with them.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So clearly he's also not sober. Very nice chap, but we went to see them afterwards to hang out, and I was literally, and I actually wrote on the inner sanctum like, oh, I'm at a bar and I can't,
Yeah.
We literally hung out in front of the bar, and it was, they know I'm sober because they know a little bit about my history, and it was just kind of like, I don't know, I had fun and I felt safe, but it was more like I didn't want to be there.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, it's not as exciting.
It's
if
not
you're
just,
I mean, I circling back to your dinner, what were the ladies' reaction when you and your friend were talking?
They were not paying attention to us
Okay.
at all. No, they were going back and forth, talking. And we were just kind of like, yeah,
because
they drink.
I always find myself when I'm in a situation like that, that I don't want to proselytize about why everybody should stop drinking, because that just makes me like a bore, and nobody wants to hear it because they're out to have a good time and they don't want to
I just say for
fucking
me,
temperance guy, teetotal.
Right.
So, I try to, like when I go to the work conferences and stuff, I mention it comes up, and then it gets dropped and never mentioned again, because you're not going to belabor the point. Even though I did start talking to that attorney, but we went off to the side and had that conversation. It was not around everybody else.
Secret,
I mean, not that it's a secret. It's just like,
you don't want to offend the booze.
Yeah, I don't want to, exactly. And who am I to pass judgment on what people do to have a good time?
I get that feeling too. Like when we were in the bar afterwards with the wine salesman, like every time I had to turn down a drink, and just I felt like, it's probably all in my head, but I was feeling like I don't want them to think I'm judging them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Even though, I do sometimes judge.
But it's just an awkward...
I can't help it because you know what it is? Having my brain turned in that direction to where I see alcohol as a societal scourge and a thing that's going to eventually kill you if you drink it long enough, that keeps me sober. So for me, that's such a part of my sobriety that I cannot help but look at it that way. But I'm also like a human being, and I'm polite, and I'm not going to go and tell people they're fucking killing themselves, because, who knows? That person a year down the road may think, Mike isn't drinking, so, maybe I should call him.
56.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's one of those things. And Monksters out there, tell us what your experiences are with this. I mean, I feel like everybody kind of experiences when you're getting sober or you're staying sober, you still want to fit in with people who are also drinking, but you have this inner struggle with if they're really close to you and you're friends, you want to be save them and knock the beer out of their hand. You know what I mean? But obviously you can't do that. But
because that doesn't work.
No, it doesn't. So I try and lead by example. And
exactly.
I encourage everybody out there to do this too.
You know what's depressing though that I've noticed? Leading by example doesn't work all the time.
No,
it doesn't, because they always say that the best parenting that you can do is to set an example for your kids by the way. You want them to eat vegetables, then you eat a lot of vegetables.
Right.
I've been eating vegetables for the last 17 fucking years, and my oldest son still will not put a piece of fucking broccoli in his mouth. So, it gets depressing after a while where you're continuously setting the example and no one seems to be picking up on it.
Well, I feel like with that stuff, it's the long con.
Yes, the long game.
Eventually, just like me with my father, in my maturity, I guess, in my adulthood, I now think back on stuff, the way my father behaved, and then do it now because it's in my head and that's the way I want it to be. But for a long time, I was doing nothing but rebelling against that. So maybe just by doing it now, you're leading by example, it'll later on, they'll think back to, well, my dad was doing it this way.
See, but other people, when they start doing what their parents are doing, have to go through very expensive long-term therapy to stop doing it, because it's not the good example, So I guess you're right. I guess what that tells me is that it is being transmitted.
Yes.
And it's being stored in the subconscious.
Just got to be patient.
So you have to be very careful though about how you lead by example, right?
Yes.
Same thing goes with
the bad stuff.
Not drinking. and if you want to attract people to that, it's almost a fucking alternative lifestyle, right?
It is.
If you want to attract people to that, you have to not be a dick.
Right. They just want to see that, wow, this guy, why is he so happy? Why does not have so much energy? Why is he doing all of these things? It's because I can, and it's because I don't drink, I
always felt though that when I was drinking and I was around sober people that I was being judged. And I don't know if that was true. I'm sure there's
like
some
being
of
around
that,
Christians,
but a lot of that was also me. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Me knowing that what I was doing was not what I should be doing. So I was basically judging myself, but I was laying it on them.
Right.
Saying, oh, look at that sanctimonious son of a bitch, Yeah. Meanwhile, he's just like normal, not
right.
But you're reading all this shit into it because your own brain is so whacked out.
I think that too. And it's even come out especially with some of my friends who tried to get sober and then stopped getting sober and just went back to drinking.
Just threw in the towel.
They
enough of that.
Yeah, and they're kind of like, well, I'm not doing that anymore. And I feel like I'm being a dick by, kind of still being like, no, I fucking hate drinking and I'm never doing it again.
Right.
But it's all.
Or just by your example, like people who are drinking and who have an issue with it, whether it's in their conscious mind or not, you're like a living example of how much better their lives could be. And that makes them uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think so. And
because I know it worked when I was drinking and I'd see people who were sober for years,
like, fuck that guy.
Yeah,
There's
exactly.
No way he's really sober.
Exactly. Even though, and I really regret missing out on what could have been much deeper friendships than I ended up having with some of these guys because they were sober for years, but they didn't want any part of what I was doing.
No.
And I can't blame them. Now that I'm on the other side of the fence and I see what that's like.
Yeah.
It's rough. I don't know.
Speaking of rough, I understand you went back to work.
Yesterday was the first day I went to my office in New Jersey in over 2 years. So, the morning commute it took me an hour and a half to get there in the morning because of just general traffic. And I was like, all right. But it was really weird, Nat, because I walked into the lobby of the building, right? Mm-hmm. And they had done a renovation in the lobby, but not a lot. Like they changed like the tile on the floor and the color of the paint, and they hung a couple of paintings up. And then I walked into the little cafe, and they'd made changes, but it wasn't a lot. And for a minute, I thought, like, am I asleep? How like when you dream and you walk into your house and everything's the same except for like a few things are like a little different?
Yeah.
That's what it felt like.
Was it your same?
So weird, man.
Was it your same desk? Did you
My desk hadn't been touched since I left, which was very interesting because I came back to some gifts that were waiting for me. Would you like to know what they are?
You got gifts?
Yes. People send me Christmas presents because of work that I dole out to various vendors and so on. Most of it is wine. Yes. So I had 4 bottles of wine waiting for me. I unwrapped them all and stacked them up there. And then someone else sent me a soft cooler type backpack.
Oh, cool.
With a bottle opener attached to it.
Oh.
So if I want to put a 6-pack of beer in there, I can do that, and I will always have an opener. And it got me thinking, like, when did alcohol become like the currency of business? Like to the point where, like, could you send me some like cookies or something? Like, do you have to send me like a fucking backpack I can use for booze and then booze?
People give teachers like wine and bus drivers.
Yeah.
You know how we do gifts?
Bus drivers.
Yeah. Seriously.
We used to hand the bus driver when I was a kid, we'd hand him a bottle of scotch. Our parents would give us a bottle of scotch and say, give this to the bus driver.
That guy needs some scotch.
Yes, because he's driving you children around. So he should have 10 bottles of booze with him right before Christmas.
It's that's his.
I don't know. It's just
part
it freaked.
society,
I was just like, whatever, man. But you know what? I had all the pictures of the kids up that I had up for years, and I'm looking at them, and now they're 2 years older.
Wow.
Than and the whole thing was just a real mind fuck. Well, the only thing they did was they moved the cubicle walls higher, so we couldn't, spread COVID over a cubicle wall. Anyway, so it was actually kind of nice being in the office. I actually got a lot of work done. Because there were no distractions. And, but it was good seeing my some of my coworkers who I really enjoy their company and appreciate them. But then I had to go home, and there was 2 tractor trailers crashed on the George Washington Bridge, and it took me 2 hours and 40 minutes to get home.
Oy vey.
So and I know what I would have done 3 years ago after a 2 hour and 40 minute commute. I would have sat in the kitchen and drained a bottle of wine, felt really sorry for myself, and then went to bed. But I actually hit it with equanimity, right? During the whole drive. Maybe it's because it was not like an everyday occurrence, and the fact that I only have to go back to work 2 days a week, like to suffer that commute. But I'm in a very different headspace than I was, back 2.5 years ago.
Yeah, did you feel like when and this has happened to me recently, so I wondered if it's going on with you, where you find yourself in these scenarios like traffic and stressed, and you're like, wow, this would be when typically I would drink, but you just don't.
Yes. Or what I would have felt was incredible annoyance that I was going to be 2 hours late getting to my nightly wine bottle.
Yeah.
I never actually pulled over on the way home.
Yeah.
Well,
that's good.
But you're like,
it's a good thing.
Yeah. But it's crossed my mind, but mostly it's because I'm driving through the Bronx, and any place I'd pull over would be someplace I would either get killed or
I would just have something in the car waiting for me.
I don't know. I just, but
you
I don't know.
Drink.
So I got to go tomorrow. I got to go back, and I'm assuming there's not going to be an overturned tractor trailer on the way home, and maybe it'll only take me an hour and a half to get home. We'll see.
Right. And you're not going to drink because you don't, it doesn't hold a place in your psyche that it used to, which is that shining bottle on the hill.
It's not I don't see it as a stress reliever. Yeah. It's not like a reward for sitting in traffic for 2 hours. It would just make things worse. I would be more tired. I would be more irritable. And I don't want that. Who wants that?
No more lying to ourselves.
No more lying to ourselves. The only last thing I wanted to say is tonight is the new Star Trek series, Brave New World's premiere.
Why is this so special?
Okay. Do you watch any of the new Star Trek shows? Have you watched Discovery?
I watched 2.5 seasons.
So Captain Pike.
Yes.
In the second season. Yeah. He got his own show.
Really?
So it's basically Star Trek canon pre-Enterprise. It's Pike and Spock, Dr. M'Benga, a couple other Nurse Chapel, and Number One, who are all in the pilot in the original Star Trek series, The Cage. Also the Menagerie, season 1, parts 1 and 2.
Wow.
And they gave Anson Mount, who plays Pike, the whole show. And it's very exciting because it's going to be like old Star Trek.
So Pike wasn't the annoying, there was one of the captains they gave it to. I forget her name. She was awful, and she ended up being like the bad guy. And
Georgia?
Yes.
Yeah, she was she was the emperor from the alternative universe.
She could not get a line out. Remember last week you're like, you wouldn't believe, Nat just read that,
I liked her.
She can't deliver. Her timing was awful.
I don't like Disco. I didn't like the writing so much. But this show I'm very excited for. But thankfully we don't live in 1968 anymore, so if I miss it, I can just go back and watch it tomorrow.
Well, I might get into that with you. I haven't watched Picard, but I'm looking for it.
I heard it was bad.
If we're talking about new shows, and we do have to take a break and move on, there's a show I want everyone who loves great writing, science fiction, Kafka-esque stories.
Wow.
It is on Apple TV Plus, and it is called Severance. This show,
I've heard of it.
Is brilliant. The writing is brilliant. The acting, brilliant. The story, it's like I said, Kafka-esque. It's like really, really good. So I'll leave that there.
Well,
Severance.
So when I looked at a little bit of the preview of it, and I don't think this is giving anything away, basically the premise is that they give you some kind of a drug, right?
It's like it's an implant.
Yeah, that separates completely your work life from your home life.
Right, just like they do at Area 51 now. You go in and you don't remember anything for the 8 hours that you're at work.
Wow.
So while you're at work for 8 hours, you don't know who you are. But when you're outside of work, you don't know who you are at work. So essentially, the you that's at work is like in hell. and there's all these little clues like the girl's name who starts there, her name is Helly, and on the welcome it's like, hello, Helly. It's just the word hell twice. It's just like, I'm really reading into it, but it's just like, and she wants to leave, but the person on the outside like is really controlling you. So it's like separates your consciousness. Oh, it's amazing. It's so good. It's mystery. It's science fiction. It's drama.
I am down.
Watch
I'm totally
it.
going to watch.
And
So let's take a short break.
should break.
And be back after these words. Nobody actually ever says any words. Okay.
Yeah, someday. And we're back.
Get a little closer.
I mean, I'll be on your lap, and then we will have completely crossed all boundaries associated with our relationship.
We do have to set boundaries.
Yes, we do.
Okay, so we've reached that point of the show where we're going to talk about the main topic.
What is the point of what point have we reached?
I don't know, but we're an hour and 11 minutes in.
Well,
and you know what? People are clamoring for longer shows.
yes. Well, the fans we do have like a long form show. They just want to.
Do they?
They want to settle into a discussion. They want to think along with us. And
Is that what we're doing?
yes, that's
Okay.
what we're doing. So coming back, I feel like I'm a little distracted by this.
You are, because you now have to stare at your face.
I know, and I hate it. You can see, like, I have all this stress acne that is just being pronounced by these lights.
You can't really see the stress acne.
It's like, it's getting me, but that's fine because
It's all right.
I'm
So anyway, your best thinking got you into this shit, right?
yeah.
So that quote is usually, before AA stole it and used it for its own nefarious purposes, that quote was actually attributed wrongly, as it turns out, to Albert Einstein, who supposedly said something like, you cannot solve a problem with the same thinking that caused it. Now, he was talking about how to think your way out of the possibility of nuclear war based on the atomic shit that he'd been doing.
People quote Einstein all the time, and it's so annoying.
Yes, because most of the time...
Repeating yourself or doing the same thing. How many times have you heard someone go, doing the same thing over and over again is a definition of insanity?
That's also an
Einstein.
AA slogan.
But yeah, and they're always with that. And I'm like, enough.
Well, I mean, thinking outside the box, though, right? However cliche, it's often... I think what Einstein meant was that thinking outside the box is often necessary, and it's an effective way to come up with new ideas and to fix problems. Don't you think?
I think that my favorite Einstein quote is the following. Once you can accept the universe as matter expanding into nothing that is something, wearing stripes with plaid comes easy.
He probably never said that either.
Yeah, it's on the internet and it even has his name.
It's on the internet.
See, this is Google, and there he is. I just love that quote.
Okay.
Sorry.
The problem is when you put an injunction against thinking, as we see in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, when you elevate it to become an overriding doctrine, I think it's dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a cult, and that's one of the reasons people say this is a cult or you're in a cult. It's because that's what most cults are like. Please stop thinking.
They tell you what to think.
They said, don't think, do what we say. Except in AA and recovery 12-step, they're doing it to save your life.
Are they?
I think they probably think they are.
Maybe they are, but does motivation matter?
I don't know. Intent, isn't that something to do with the law?
Well,
doesn't intent matter?
You should have, yes. I mean, intent matters, right? But if your intent is to get people sober, then maybe you should use the most effective, scientifically proven method to get there.
Yeah, that would be something.
I don't know. That's just me.
Well, but when you're surrounded, when you're in a world where, these programs are like the standard, this is what everybody goes to first. I mean, when I was really struggling, this is long ago, let's say 18 years ago, when I first was like, maybe I have a cocaine problem, maybe I should do something. This is the first thing I did was I looked for an AA meeting or an NA meeting. I remember
they were the only game in town 18 years ago.
That's the thing. And that was before my mind was, I don't want to say polluted by all this recovery stuff, but before I knew all of this recovery stuff, for the common person who is struggling, that's the first place you go to. It's the first thing that gets recommended to you.
Yeah, but isn't that paradigm changing now?
I'd like to
is it the first place now that people get sent to? Or is the first thing that's done is you're evaluated by a doctor, you're given a therapist, maybe you're considered for medication?
I don't know. I was in a very different situation because it was legal. And so the system, right. I was, before I had the DWI and I was compelled to do recovery. I did have about a year and a half of trying to do it on my own before it was court mandated. And so I try and think back to that time and what was I doing? And, the first thing I did was I tried to get I'm thinking back now, was I did try and get a therapist to help me with it. I remember that.
Right.
But really it's 12 step.
I believe, and I firmly believe, that you have an innate wisdom that you can tap into, that you can trust. Is my addiction sneaky? Is it conniving?
Is it doing push-ups in the parking lot?
Yes, but is it hard? Is it really hard to distinguish between the voice of your own inner wisdom and the voice of addiction? Rational recovery calls that the addiction voice recognition technique, ARVT, where any thought that comes into your head that pushes you towards using is not you. It's the thing that makes you want to use. And that's a way to, if you want to shortcut your thinking, to me, that's a more effective way to do it than to wait for God to take away your,
so you think stuff. So when somebody is in that state where you're trying to tell them, a loved one, a friend, that they've got a problem and they have all of these obvious things going wrong in their life directly related to drinking or using drugs, and no matter what you say to them, they have some argument, some brilliant answer as to why what you're saying isn't right and the way they're doing it is right. You think deep down inside they actually know that they're wrong?
Yes, I do. But I also think that maybe that's not the right question, because you can't force someone to stop using drugs unless you put them in prison.
And even then.
Right.
You can
boof even it. Then. So
boof it.
You could boof it.
Boof it.
Right. But so when would that such a hypothetical conversation ever take place, other than on an episode of what's the one where they surprise everyone with a intervention? I had
these conversations when my family started trying to convince me to get sober.
And were you ready to stop at that point?
No. Well, clearly I wasn't. So I had another 6 years. But
right. So it could have been AA. It could have been anybody. It wouldn't have mattered.
I don't know. Maybe. It's
so at that point, before you had that extra 6 year run,
right?
If someone had dragged you into an AA meeting and told you to shut up and just listen to what we're telling you, you would have been okay with that? You would have just accepted that?
Well, I don't know. I didn't, that's for sure. I was arguing every which way that, cause I was in a spot where I'm I'm a functional addict. And, my answer was, look, I'm paying my bills. I have my job. What is the problem? I'm just having fun. I'm not doing anything. Here's another one that we say. I'm only hurting myself. I'm not hurting my wife. I'm not hurting my family. And so we say these things when we're in that state. We're just trying to protect our addiction. We don't want to do anything to change it because you're so possessed by this addiction that I don't know, unless you're until I got legally forced, almost physically, to finally get sober, I still was fighting against it, because the way I always looked at it was it's possession. Maybe it isn't you. Maybe the you that's deep down inside who knows right from wrong isn't in charge, isn't behind the wheel.
Well, maybe, but who had that theory that we were talking about with Evan about how it's a demon, right?
Yeah, that's why I really like perked up when he said that. I'm like, yes, because you are not
aside from the obvious demon
the
fun demon shit.
I love it, but you're not behind the wheel. So when you're looking into the eyes of someone, Jesus, take the wheel. Satan has the wheel. And so when you're looking at someone and you're asking them to do some real soul searching, some real thinking, it's not them behind their eyes right then. You're talking to an addiction right there.
No,
so how can you expect the addiction to do anything that would destroy it?
Well, you look at the alternative theory that the demon is actually a protective demon, and it's protecting you from whatever trauma you started using for him in the first place, right? So
that's not going to get you anywhere at that point.
I don't know if it'll get you anywhere, but I mean, it sounds to me like almost as if you're arguing for a more, I don't know, a more punitive measure, like all these bills that are popping up in these different states about how we should be, giving jail time to people rather than.
Yeah, I mean, that's crazy,
Well, but is it? I mean, it sort of seems like a logical
jail time for children.
Conclusion to your argument, though, because, I mean, like, it doesn't matter if AA tells you to shut up and not listen, your therapist tells you, or a cop tells you. If you're not ready, if your brain is not in the place where you're receptive, you're just not going to stop anyway. It doesn't matter if it's AA yelling at you or somebody else.
I don't know. I would like to hear from some people out there, because there's got to be, I know there's people who have been thrust into sobriety for a number of different reasons, whether it's jail, whether it's, going to some forced rehab, where it forced them to sit there. And I've read some books. Jail usually doesn't get you sober, but it's an example of being put in jail when you, let's say, in a situation where it isn't being boofed or smuggled in. Sometimes that is where people do finally get sober, when they're locked up and they are forced to detox.
Okay, so maybe you're talking, maybe there's a small subset of people who are in that position where they're going to need to be completely removed, which to me, going to jail is basically pulling a geographic. That's how I see it. I mean, when you get out, unless you deal with the issues in there, when you get out, you're just going to run down the same problems. But, because wherever you go, there you are, right? But I don't think for the majority of people that have drinking problems, I mean, and I inhabit that other end of the continuum, right? The problematic drinking end. I've been on the side where you are, when I was running around in the Bronx with the crack. I guess days.
I was there too recently. It's like still, I think that's everybody, but it's not. It's not the Annie Grace audience.
I fought my way out of a crack addiction.
Right.
So, to me, it's experiential to me that it did work, because, I mean, what about the argument that your best thinking got you into recovery? And it's your best thinking was that you just see. That's why I didn't want to bring the cookies, because I've been staring at those cookies like since we started talking, and I really wanted to grab one and eat it, and I'm like, I can't. But you
can't
eat on camera. People don't want to see you chewing. What about people who have misophonia? Like, doesn't Erin have that? So you're far away from the microphone.
I'm trying to stay away from the mic.
Anyway,
my best thinking ate a cookie.
I mean, the idea to phone AA pops into your mind. If you disregard every thought that comes into your mind on the basis that it came into your mind, you would never go to AA, you'd never get a sponsor, and you'd never do the steps, right? I mean, I think the best people to talk to about addiction are people who encourage you to examine your own thinking, critically.
The mind, it turns out, is perfectly capable of assisting and healing itself, provided that sound principles and the guidance of others are used.
Yes.
I think.
So maybe that is AA for some people.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I know guys who've been sober 30 years in AA.
Well, that's the thing. You've got that 5-10% that, like, it changed their lives, and they're changing 5% of other people's lives.
Eventually, we're talking about real numbers here.
And maybe that's enough. I mean, thinking alone is not going to achieve anything.
Plenty of action is required.
Right. And certain types of thinking are certainly discouraged. For instance, the morbid reflection against which there is such a strong injunction in the big book. It sounds like it was written by a lawyer. Ruminating on resentment and fear will not help either. There are also times when I have had to take action blindly against my own best thinking because someone I trust suggests it as a solution to my problems. Did you write this, or is this from?
No, I pulled a lot of stuff off the internet that I'm not attributing, because I'm only using like sentence here and a sentence there to sort of crystallize ideas. So my intent was not to read it for the most part, but
like I did.
Just sort of point out different ways that people approach this.
That was my best thinking that made me just read that.
That's okay.
That's my best thinking.
Your best thinking had you eat that cookie.
That's true. There's a popular misconception, though, that I read about. And a popular misconception is the first step. You hear this all the time. I know this is good. First, your first thing you have to do, the first step is to admit you have a problem. But in AA, as most of us know, the first step is actually to admit you're powerless over alcohol, and that your life had become unmanageable.
But apparently your best thinking is enough that you can keep the rest of your life together. At least this is the experience of people who are on the gray area drinking scale of things.
The functional addict.
Functional alcoholic. It's very, I kept my whole life together, and it was just this one area. So
right, that kept me using for a long time. I was hopping the Long Island Railroad to Wall Street, where I was a chief marketing officer for this big company, and I used to meet my dealer in the parking lot of, what was it? I wanted to say Woolworths. No, they don't have Woolworths anymore.
In Manhattan?
No, in any case, at a supermarket, I was meeting my dealer, and I would just make the train on time so I could get my fix. I wouldn't be sick, and I could get to the office. And to me, I'm like, I made it to the office. I've got this great job. Just because I met a dealer, this is just a business transaction. I'm fine.
Let me ask you a question. You did not, during any of that running around, think to yourself, I should not be doing this. This is ridiculous.
I always thought it, but I was
So that's your best thinking.
Yeah, maybe. I see what you're saying. So,
your worst thinking is the one guy that met the dealer in the Woolworths parking lot.
But who's doing that?
They're both you. That's the thing. They're both
possession.
you.
It wasn't me.
It
wasn't me.
I mean, a demon is a good allegory for a protective part of your brain, right?
I don't like to think of it as protective. I like to think of it as a demon.
No,
trying to destroy me.
As a guardian angel trying to protect you from a greater hurt.
Guardian angel trying to get me to snort heroin before I go to my job every day?
Yeah, because that protects you from facing whatever it is that you were trying not to face.
I'm going to report that angel to HR because it is not what they should be doing. But understood. I think we're getting somewhere with this. I'm not sure where, but we are getting somewhere.
Thank God.
I like this direction that you were taking here, talking about the steps, powerlessness. A lot of the Monksters bring up how they don't like to think of themselves as powerless. And what is this powerlessness? And how dare you say I have no power? And if you take my power away, what do I really have? But I think I understand why powerlessness is a theme in AA, and why it's actually might be helpful when you first come into AA. And that first step is you have to say, I don't got this. I don't have it. I am willing to accept a new way of moving forward. And that's what they're talking about.
Or how about you teach me and I will learn, but like every philosopher or religious figure in history worth his salt, one of the things that they always say is test the teachings and decide for yourself if they're good or they're not good. And if they're not good, then jettison them. Because even in the Serenity Prayer, what you pray for is wisdom to know the difference between the things you can change and the things you can't change.
God, grant me the serenity.
So if you're praying for wisdom, that implies that you're going to use the discriminating mind.
I think your problem is you didn't spend a lot of time with bottom basement addicts on probation for so many years like I did. These people, and I was one of those people, are not thinking on that level.
I agree with you.
There's no way you could get them to think like that.
I spent 5 years smoking crack in the Bronx on an almost daily basis. And I guarantee you that I knew what I was doing was fucked up the entire time. The entire time. And I did it anyway. And it wasn't until I was like, this is so fucked up that I need to stop, that I stopped.
If you got, let's say, hypothetically,
I could have been arrested 100 times.
let's say you got arrested. Let's say you were locked up for a month, unable to get drugs or anything, a forced sobriety. Don't you think you might have had a chance at the end of that, because you got your head clear against your will, that maybe then you could have your best thinking, actually making decisions? Like, maybe there is a period of time for a certain level of acute addict where maybe the best thing is to, 5150, get this person under medical supervision so they can't hurt themselves anymore. And then you can start thinking about your ego and whatever the hell else, Gabor Mate. And
you can't separate
the rest
them.
of them.
I mean, I would never argue that someone who is, just coming off of like years or decades of active addiction has their shit together, right?
No.
But it doesn't mean that you check your brain at the door when you go in for treatment. Now, the flip side of that is, I guess I could argue that if I don't need to know the basis behind cancer treatment if I'm being treated for cancer, right? I should just shut up and take the drug in my arm, right?
Bingo.
Okay.
That's a great point. For
Except
the other
I don't
side.
believe in the disease model, so I don't know how far you can carry that. But
it's analogous, though.
it is analogous. So maybe I can give you a little on that. But I think that once you detox and spend some time getting your brain unfucked,
Yes.
but I'm
you're coming along to my
I'm
side.
extremely hesitant. And maybe for, white men like us, it's not such a big deal, but I'm trying to think of like the implications of women coming into AA, turning their will and everything over to the group or to the new, they're new. And then there's some guys like, stick the cotton in your mouth. Just let's do everything I tell you to do, what about that shit? I mean, that's a little fucked up too. And it happens. We know it happens.
Yeah. And I was reading your outline in your notes and I saw that come up. And I was like, here we go. He's headed towards to this angle, because this is a whole other ball of shit. And it completely changes the debate, because it is a real issue. It is important to discuss, and it is a problem. And I think we did an episode on it, only one. We could probably do more about the 13th step. And women, and I feel like we need to have Erin on here to talk about this, because I don't feel great speaking for women.
Shouldn't we just mansplain the whole thing?
But I don't. I'm trying not to do mansplaining.
Let's tell the women what we think of the problem.
The women would love to hear
what women
what they
have.
But we're aware that this is a very tricky situation. We've seen it with women being preyed upon in it. And so the question that does this type of thinking, that the culture of, your stinking thinking, discouraging people from taking a positive action in their own lives with their own thinking, don't have a relationship for a year, don't make any major changes, because it's relevant, like according to this here, that, because it undermines your personal agency. So you're making someone powerless. And that means if they're powerless, they need to rely on someone or something.
Well, you figure a young woman is coming into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, and you hear the following statements, right? Your best thinking got you here. Your thinking is alcoholic. You have a thinking problem, not a drinking problem. You need a checkup from the neck up. I'm powerless over people, places, and things. I mean, it seems to me that is designed to disassemble your self-esteem even more. And I think the last thing and here I am explaining what the last thing that women need.
Yes, thank you,
But,
Mike.
I think the last thing people need in general is to have their self-esteem torn down. Because then you open yourself up to the potential to be manipulated, to be abused,
right.
And not everybody in AA has your best interest at heart, unfortunately.
Not anybody anywhere necessarily has.
Yeah.
best interest
Okay, AA
at
is
heart.
no different from the rest of the world, right?
Right, but they are positioned to be helping people in powerless situations, and so it's incumbent upon them to try and mitigate those circumstances. But if you're saying that the entire premise of the program is like setting people up just to be taken advantage of.
And I'm not saying, I don't think I'm saying that. I think there's a lot of good intent, right? I think there is.
The road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm just saying.
But there are other recovery programs that take a completely different approach.
I would love to talk more about smart recovery, not just today, but
yeah.
I'd love to revisit it. And I think smart recovery is one of those, probably the main.
There you go.
They're probably the biggest competitor, would you say?
I wouldn't use the word competitor. I think they're the biggest alternative.
You know.
I mean, are people making money off this?
I think people are making money off of it, but that's
AA rakes in millions of dollars a year.
There you go. They're a competitor.
Smart, though, is considered from the get-go to be about self-empowerment.
The leopard gecko?
From the leopard get-go. And you know, the whole acronym of SMART is self-management and recovery training, right? Self-management. So participants work with volunteers in SMART to examine their own behavior to work out which ones require the most attention. So when a person is aware of the behavior that they need to work on, they learn to control their behaviors with techniques from cognitive behavioral therapy and motivational enhancement therapies. Cognitive behavioral therapy presupposes that there's some cognition that's going to go on. Right?
I like cognition.
Because not everybody is going to have the same problems. I mean, even though the outward manifestation of the problem is similar or the same, someone who's drinking, someone who's using substances to as a palliative or something to deal with trauma or what have you.
Right.
But everybody is an individual. They come from different experiences, you know, so maybe there's not a one size fits all approach that's appropriate, like 12 steps. Maybe each person needs a program designed for the issues that they're working with. I think this whole idea of reducing addiction to this thing that can just be treated in everybody the same way is just, maybe that's the wrong approach.
I mean, but it's how we treat everything, isn't it? I mean, what other disease or problem that people have is treated like different for everybody? I mean, this is the way we handle
gene
things.
therapy is becoming a huge thing, and gene therapy is tailoring medication to your specific genome. I mean, it's the very basis of modern medicine.
Well, that is the latest development, yes. And so thank you for bringing that up. But that is true. I forgot about that. Yes, and it's very interesting. And standard, this new cancer treatment, what Mike is talking about, I think, is that they do, it's really amazing. They're like treating the cancer specific to your genetic makeup. And it's an amazing, brilliant development in modern science. Everybody does not have access to this, but it sounds amazing.
But it's analogous to recovery programs.
True. I mean, it is just a very new thing, but yes, that completely is.
So in smart recovery, a person is taught self-empowerment and reliance on themselves as being the key to success. Participants are encouraged to discover and plan out their recovery path, and it shifts the locus of control to an internal position. What do you think about them apples?
Well, I like those apples, and I propose an apple pie because, look, I'm in agreement. I loved smart recovery. This is where I get hung up on this stuff. It's all theoretically, yes. The same thing we said to Evan Haynes. It's
trade in theories here.
It's great. What a great idea. Every person who comes through our door, we are going to treat that person and their individual needs, and we're going to look at all of the little traumas they may or may not have had and the things they think and the type of music they listen to, and maybe this one likes to play guitar and this one likes to play with devil sticks.
What's wrong with that?
Because it's absurd. There's too many people. It's too serious a problem. Lives are at stake, goddammit.
Yes.
And we have to stop it before they die. How do you do that? You stop them.
Effective, lasting solutions that work for the individual.
You got to stop them. You just.
Well, then you could lock them to a fucking wall and then they'll stop using.
This is what I'm suggesting. We have to take these people.
What happened to compassionate care and unconditional positive regard and all that stuff that we were so into like a month ago?
We can get to that later, but at first you got to stop them. You just tie them up. But seriously, folks,
I mean, anybody want to join our recovery program? That'll tie you to the wall for a month. And maybe feed you these cookies.
I'm thinking of calling it the Phoenix House. Anything that? No, but that's where that goes. The problem with what I was just kind of shticking about is that it heads in an abusive and very damaging direction. And yes, of course, we should treat everybody as a snowflake, and they're all different.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
We have to. But I agree with that. Where I'm worried about is, I'm worried about in practice when you have this just like overflowing system of people who desperately need like help. They need a bed at these rehabs,
Yes,
and maybe they should.
That's a different issue.
But that's the triage, right?
I mean, can you solve addiction problems by solving the social issues that come along with like homelessness and poverty? You could probably eliminate half of addiction if you could get rid of those problems.
I love that.
That's not going to happen either.
Let's do it. Can we?
I don't know. I don't have enough money to get rid of poverty. Elon Musk does, but he's off buying Twitter and shit.
Yeah, it's just like there's so many angles. And listen, I feel like if you can get somebody who is resistant to treatment, maybe this is why I always recommend to people, because I hear from people of all walks of life, all stripes, all levels of addiction and everything. And what I say to almost all of them is get yourself to a hospital detox, see a doctor. Mm-hmm. And for me, that's like the compassionate way to lock somebody up in a safe place with medical oversight.
Yeah.
So in a way, that's what I really want for people. It's be in a hospital and be with doctors where you can't go meet your guy or hopefully not have heroin delivered. Get that treatment, and then in a couple of weeks, when you're sort of out of commission, getting healing and detoxing, then you can make a better decision about the treatment that you should or shouldn't have.
Okay, sure. Because you're not doing much thinking at all when you're detoxing.
No, and I think it must be done. And I think before you detox, that demon is behind the wheel, and you cannot reason with Beelzebub.
Right. But the proper place for someone who can't reason is not at an AA meeting when someone's telling them to put the cotton in their mouth. The place is in a detox where they're receiving medical treatment by medical providers, psychiatrists, and psychologists.
Okay, so I think we're coming to an agreement before we end this segment, because we are at 150.
Yeah, it's time
I think we're going to come to an agreement and say that the best way to begin a kind of treatment like this is to be in a doctor setting, in a supervised setting. You have to detox in a safe medical way.
Well, it depends.
I think mostly, like if you've got someone who's just like, I have too much, I have a glass of champagne every day, and
they don't need a detox.
No, they need a punch in the back,
No, they need to. Those are the people that need the smart recovery, cognitive behavioral therapy.
But for someone like the way I was, I feel like I could have been 5150, and maybe that's the thing, which means to be against your will, to be in a hospital and to be forced detoxed. I think that's too much.
No,
we don't want to force detox.
Well, let's tie people to a table and electrocute them and shit.
All right, maybe not forced detox, but I think we're in agreement that a detox for someone, an acute sufferer who is really going through it.
Yeah.
A medical detox, at which time you may choose to go to AA and then reap the benefits of maybe not the specifics of the program, but the community and the support and all of that good stuff you get from AA that people get all the time when they're not, doing the other stuff.
You know where else people can find that support? If they join the Recovery in the Middle Ages Patreon.
It's patreon.com/Recovery in the Middle Ages. And I think from there, we're going to move on.
We're going to move on.
Yeah. To Recovery in the News.
Yeah, that was a good one. So Recovery in the News comes from that August publication, High Times magazine.
Oh, very good.
Yes. Did you read High Times? Were
I
you ever
didn't.
into weed that you read High Times?
I wasn't. I had friends that were.
For those of you, everybody knows High Times, right? But if you don't, it's a magazine dedicated to the appreciation of weed in all of its forms.
They have like a centerfold.
The centerfold is is bud, like not boobs, but like it's a pot plant.
That I remember.
Anyway, I just stumbled across this story. I had not even thought of High Times in the last 25 years. I didn't even know it still existed, but apparently they're doing some crackerjack journalism around the issues of, legalization of cannabis across a number of different states. But the title of the article is "Why Are So Many Americans in Legal States Still Dying from Alcohol-Related Causes?" Right? Now, the old expression, like, if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail, comes to mind here. Because it seems like the pot people here are like, if cannabis is legal, how come everybody's not switching to cannabis and just not drinking anymore? And I think it came as a bit of a shock to people who assumed that that was going to be the natural trajectory, that it actually hasn't really happened.
It doesn't work that way.
They used the phrase "cannabis is safer than alcohol" because it was the almost like the official slogan why the average stoner should be able to appreciate the same freedom as those who enjoy a stiff drink, because cannabis is much safer. It's less risky, and as they say, less risky than the sauce Americans pour down their gullets during sporting events, weekends, or any other day where it becomes absolutely imperative to either celebrate the good times or drown out the bad. But no matter how tightly the bottle is woven into the puke-stained fabric of civil society, alcohol remains one of the most savage killers of any inebriating substance, legal or not.
Beautiful.
Nothing to argue with in that statement.
Who wrote this?
Right? I think he was high.
I love it.
He was probably high.
Beautifully written.
They go on to talk about how, the alcohol kills 100,000 people a year through liver failure and cancer. Meanwhile, as they say, the most horrendous consequence that the average cannabis fan might endure, at least as far as we can tell, is perhaps putting on a few extra pounds after stuffing their face with everything in the kitchen once the munchies kick in. But anyway.
How many people die of marijuana-related illnesses every year?
None.
Is that true?
There isn't even any statistically significant evidence that smoking flower elevates your risk of cancer.
Flower.
Yes.
I've heard people call it flower.
Apparently, marijuana is a derogatory term towards Mexicans, and I hate to use it on Cinco de Mayo.
That's what they say, cannabis.
Yes,
because it's Latin.
We're going to use the word cannabis henceforth.
And cannabinoids.
Yes, cannabinoids, which no one can ever pronounce. But
cannabinoid.
So, a legion of advocates claim that legalization may assist in pulling the great slobbering drunkard out of the nation's gutter of destitution and despair, ultimately putting them on the path of the straight and narrow. So cannabis legalization for adults has taken hold across the country, right? How many states now have some sort of legal weed law? Like it's almost in the 30s, I think.
Yeah.
It's a combination of medical and recreational. But alcohol-related deaths and disease continue to climb, even in the states where cannabis is legal or has been legal.
It's not a natural. I happen to know a real world scenario where there was a person struggling with alcohol addiction. They had a partner who was a cannabis enthusiast, and her deal was she was like, stop drinking, just have a joint when you want to drink. Mm-hmm. And it sounded like a great idea. Sounds like it could work. And what happened was he started drinking and smoking marijuana.
Right. Well, apparently, according to some of the studies they were doing, that's what people end up doing.
Yeah.
They end up doing both. And it's become an issue on the roads because, I don't know, driving high, you tend to drive like 20 miles an hour in the right-hand lane. Driving drunk, you tend to drive 80 miles an hour in the left-hand lane.
All over the place.
And if you're drunk and high, it's a mess.
You're in reverse in the wrong way.
Yes.
And yeah.
So,
not good.
Right. So there is, I know people that have used cannabis to quit drinking. I used it myself, or I used the availability and the access. I gave myself permission to use it if it was going to be a question between whether I would drink or not.
Yeah.
And cannabis would help, then I gave myself permission to use cannabis. And, I don't know if you could ever introduce cannabis as part of like a medical treatment for alcohol use disorder. But, I think for people who are trying it out on their own, what's the worst that's going to happen is, well, I don't know.
The worst
could be bad.
Well, the worst, here's my fear. I do the same thing. I have given myself permission, just as you just mentioned, that to smoke cannabis. I mean, I don't want to, and I most likely won't. Maybe I'll try an edible for sleep at some point. I haven't decided to do that, and I'm not like, I don't think about it. I'm not planning to do it.
Are you having trouble sleeping?
Oh yeah, I always have trouble sleeping. Yeah. I'm a bad sleeper, but it's one of those things, I don't think about it much, but I never say to myself, I would never do that, but I do have concerns because I don't have any moral opposition to using cannabis, and I don't know whether or not you're still sober if you do. I'm not even really concerned about that.
I think you're still in recovery. I don't know if I would consider myself sober.
But I don't even care one way or the other. Do you know what I mean?
Yes,
Where I used to, I just don't care. But my problem with it for myself is I'm afraid that were I to go down that road, it would cause me to say, well, I don't know. I feel like it might lower my inhibitions. It might get my thinking a little skewed. And if it gets skewed enough where I take that drink, then, Katie bar the door, who knows?
Would that be your best thinking or not so best?
Be my cannabis-induced thinking, not my best thinking.
See, I'll be honest with you. I have concerns about people who have previously had drugs as their drug of choice. Using cannabis.
Yeah.
I think the risk is higher than someone who just drinks.
Right, that's me.
Cannabis.
I'm worried.
Yeah.
I don't want to go down
There's
that
a lot
road.
of people who drink a lot, but just don't really think to go to the drugs.
Right, they don't have that in them. I've got that. You too. I mean, you were there.
I was there.
You can get back to probably not, because it was like a lifetime ago.
I see cannabis in a totally different place than I see other drugs. To me, it's completely different. But
I agree. But
anyway,
I think I'm
not,
that.
we're not encouraging anybody to use cannabis.
This is just for us. And my final decision for today is I will not use cannabis, but I'm not really that opposed to it.
I don't see the use case for it in my life at the moment.
Yeah.
Things are it's like adding something extra that I wouldn't want.
I could have gotten THC gummies at that store.
Get them in the cabinet upstairs.
Yeah, but it doesn't excite me.
Yeah, no interest in taking
I won't think about it again until next show, but in any case, that's Recovering the News.
It's late.
Yeah. As you can tell, I'm a little more relaxed. I'm not rushing to get out of here because I'm having fun, and my family doesn't need me because Noah. they don't care if I ever come home tonight. Noah's got what is he doing?
Maybe you should take my gummies.
I should take your gummies. Have a great night. Noah's got something tonight. Oh, he's going with a friend to see a movie, Multiverse of Madness by Marvel.
Don't know anything about that.
Marvel.
Superhero stuff. Right?
Superhero. Yeah. Doctor Strange.
I don't do the superhero.
Really?
Yeah, they're all the same.
Yeah, mostly.
Anyway.
So he's doing that, and my younger son, Max, has got a baseball game.
Nice.
And he's my little sports guy. He's doing so many sports.
Cool.
And did I say we're going to SmackDown this week?
No, I didn't know it was this week.
Oh, I got to mention this because our life update was going on too long. For his 8th birthday, which I talked about, he got tickets to Friday Night SmackDown.
Oh, so the first one's this Friday?
Friday. And it's going to be a TV taping, and we're going together at Nassau Coliseum.
It's at Nassau Coliseum.
And my wife got us like almost front row. Like we're going to be like eye level.
Nice.
With the shorter ones. You know, these guys are 6 foot. He's going to be so excited. He's making signs. I'm very excited, as you can tell.
Yes, you seem very excited.
Looking forward to it. Yeah, that's my latest degradation of my maturity is just...
That's all right.
WWE.
Maturity's overrated.
Week in Weird. Dead woman brings funeral to halt by banging on inside of casket for help.
Did this take place in America?
Peru.
Right,
by Tim Banal.
Okay.
Mourners at a funeral in Peru were astounded when the woman being laid to rest at the service suddenly began banging on the inside of her casket in a frantic attempt to reveal that she was still alive.
At the Pine Lawn Cemetery.
The shocking scene reportedly unfolded late last month in the city of Chiclayo after Rosa Isabel Céspedes. Calaca. Wow, that's a big name. Cayaca? Rosa Isabel Céspedes Cayaca had been involved in a terrible car crash that took the life of her brother-in-law and left her 3 children badly injured.
Oh, dear.
That's not funny. Why would you laugh? At the time of the accident...
You laughed.
At the time of the accident, yes.
You were blaming it on me.
I was. Doctors believed that she had also perished in the tragic event, and her family subsequently set about burying Calaca the following day at the funeral.
How does that happen in this day and age?
I don't know. That won't soon be forgotten. As her family and a sizable crowd of friends were paying respects to their departed loved one, they were taken aback when they began hearing a banging sound coming from the casket.
Hola, hola,
hola, senor.
I am here.
Insisting that something was amiss, they demanded that the funeral director open the closed coffin, which is when they discovered that the dead woman had opened her eyes and was actually still alive, although in a very weakened state. Calica was then rushed to a hospital and placed on life support until sadly she passed away.
What?
A short time later. Wow. I didn't see that one coming. Understandably outraged by the oversight, her family is now demanding answers from the hospital where she had been declared dead. Particularly troubling to them is that based on what occurred at her funeral, it would seem that Calica had actually slipped into a coma following the car accident.
No.
And that doctors may have been able to save her when they realized this before making the misjudgment.
I smell a lawsuit.
Yeah. Do they have lawyers in Peru?
Mucho dinero.
Mucho dinero. They indicated that they will even exhume her body if it will allow for some clarification as to the exact
she's probably
cause.
Dead now.
Yeah, well, she is dead.
Did you know that in the Middle Ages...
The bell?
Yes. They would put bells next to the headstone, so if they accidentally buried you alive, there would be a chain running from the bell inside the casket.
Yeah, it's
and then all the bad
cool.
kids in the village would walk around and undo the chains.
Yeah, I just watched a documentary, or I have watched one about being buried alive, and that was one of those things. And there's actually an expression that's tied to that with the bell, and I forget what it is. For whom the bell tolls, maybe.
Oh shit. No, I don't think that's
there is one. I can't think of it now, but Monksters, if you're out there,
when they exhume bodies from the Middle Ages, a not insignificant number of coffins on the inside show the clawing of people being buried alive.
Yeah,
it's fucking terrifying.
On the inside of it, you can see the nail. Well, they didn't have proper medicine. I mean, I guess they didn't have a mirror to hold up to the nose.
Before you put me in the ground, if you think I might be dead or alive, just hit me in the head with a hammer.
Something.
I don't want to wake up in the fucking coffin. Yeah. Anyway, the Week in Weird.
Week in Weird.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much, guys. That about does it for today. I know I had a great time. Did you?
It was wonderful. Really.
Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you.
Visit us at middleagesrecovery.com, Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Facebook, Instagram, Spotify, YouTube, and Twitter. So, tweet us at what you twit. Support your favorite show. Please, guys, drop a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, please. Buy a t-shirt. Join the Facebook group.
No one's ever buying a t-shirt.
I know. And if maybe they are, and
we should
the
make
website's
a quilt
not
out
working.
of them.
That's a brilliant idea.
Except it's a quilt that would look the same because they're all, well...
It might be cool. Join the Inner Sanctum, guys. We have a Patreon subscription service where you get this video will be on there. We have several other videos. The best part is you get a mug if you are Golden Circle.
That's the best part.
Or Friar Tuck. You get this awesome. People are psyched to get these mugs. We got
Did Liz ever get her mug?
I think. I have to ask her. And people, we're just having a great time. We're supporting each other's recovery. And if you want to just talk to us for God knows why, we're on there. So
yeah, we'll talk to anybody.
Patreon.com/recovery in the Middle Ages. And finally, the best way to help the show is to share it with a friend. If you have friends, share this with them.
If you don't, I don't know. Do the social media thing. Tweet us. Facebook. Instacart. Do all that stuff.
If you get something, Instagram. If you get something out of our show, help grow the RMA movement and share the love. And as we say, non proficiat perfectum.
That's progress, not perfection.
See you next time.
Be good.